The atmosphere was tense. The crowd was terrified for Obinza. Some females' admirers covered their faces. They didn't want to see Obinza beaten black and blue. Uzokwe, a man of much anger, was the first to attack Obinza. When Uzokwe menacingly drew closer, Obinza applied the Ife Oko technique and slammed Uzokwe's back on the ground. Like a cat, Uzokwe bounced back to his feet and aimed for Obinza's legs. Swiftly he grabbed Obinza's left leg. Obinza didn't expect him to recover that quickly, and so was caught unawares. When Ikemefuna saw that Uzokwe had gained an advantage over Obinza, he ran to sweep off Obinza's only leg on the ground. But alas, Ikemefuna could not move Obinza's right leg. Obinza had it dug deep into the ground as he tried to maneuver Uzokwe. To wriggle out of his fix, Obinza did the unthinkable. He grabbed Ikemefuna, the reigning champion, by his waist and took him high into the air, while he resisted Uzokwe with only one foot he had on the ground. He swung Ikemefuna around and slammed him on Uzokwe's back. Even a deaf man would have heard the sound of snapping bones. The crowd shouted rapturously at the unbelievable stunt which Obinza pulled off. Both Uzokwe and Ikemefuna wailed in excruciating pain. Ikemefuna tried to spring to his feet but collapsed. Ezenwa, a very proud man, then entered the fight. He had purposely allowed Ikemefuna and Uzokwe to wrestle against Obinza because he could not want to share the glory of defeating Obinza with them. Seeing Obinza had disarmed them, he saw it as his opportunity to take out Obinza and claim the glory to himself. But he was wrong. Obinza was not his ilk. No charm or voodoo could stop him, and not while Urenma watched the fight. Obinza threw himself at the oncoming Ezenwa and knocked him to the ground by crashing his forehead into his chest. He looked behind to make sure Uzokwe and Ikemefuna were still on the ground, and then sat on Ezenwa and began to land his trademark punches on his face. Some elders had to run into the wrestling ground to get Obinza off Ezenwa because they feared he was going to kill him. Obinza turned and saw Ikemefuna hobbling on one foot. He ran to meet him and swept him off his foot. Ikemefuna was his prime target as the reigning champion. His intention was to humiliate him before all present. While Ikemefuna lay on the ground, Obinza began to slap his face rapidly with both hands. By now the crowd was beside itself with excitement. They were certain they had all seen what was, until that day, thought impossible. When he felt he had given Ikemefuna enough dosage of slaps, he stood him to his feet and asked him to fight. Lamely, Ikemefuna attacked him. Obinza gave him no chance and knocked him down again. Seeing none of Uzokwe or Ezenwa was getting up, he sat comfortably on Ikemefuna and gave him a taste of his punches. Just 4 punches to his face, he heard Ikemefuna's neck snap. Ikemefuna began to vomit blood and went into spasm. The crowd and the elders present were in shock. Ikemefuna was dying and they didn't know what to do. Urenma ran into the wrestling ground and touched Ikemefuna. No one knew what she did when she touched Ikemefuna. As soon as her hand touched him, he stopped jerking and vomiting blood. Had Urenma not used her power to heal him, he would have died that day on the wrestling ground. Obinza was not one to boast. He went to each of his 3 opponents and congratulated them before they were bore on Nkpoko to the local orthopedist. Back at the wrestling ground, Obinza asked for more fight. Instead of accepting his challenge, the other wrestlers came and knelt at his feet. According to custom, he poured sand on their backs as they lay on the ground and walked on their backs. That day, Obinza ended that year's wrestling festival prematurely. He had beaten the best wrestlers in the land, and those left to fight him would not accept his challenge. His kinsmen bore him on their shoulders to his father's house, and so from that day the legend of Obinza began. The next day, in farms, in the streets and at the river, men, women and children sang, "Obinza has defeated the mighty, walked on the back of the weak and fearful, and has shown why the finest woman in Uke chose him to be her lover." While everyone praised Obinza as a hero and sang his name, every night Urenma cried herself to sleep. Her deep pain in her heart had made her stop her nightly visit to the river world. Her heart had become knit with Obinza's heart. They were every day growing in love and everyone was expecting them to announce their wedding. It no doubt would bring the high and mighty to Uke, but the problem was Urenma was running out of time. The season that allowed her to dwell amongst men was coming to an end, and also she was forbidden to marry any mortal by the gods, and there was no way she was going to tell Obinza that she won't marry him. Obinza would simply commit suicide. She had not yet revealed to Obinza that she was a child of the gods and a princess at that. To Obinza he had found his wife. In the night as he lay on his mat, he would thank the gods who gave a poor orphan and rejected boy like him a woman like Urenma. Though there was a few riddles he could not solve about her, like how she was able to inspire him to do impossible things. Though the people saw him as a hero and a fearless man, he knew it was all down to Urenma. He could not fathom how he was able to do things he did at the village square during the wrestling festival. He was certain there was something about Urenma that set her apart from other humans, but he could not get his hands on it. He hoped that when they must have married each other, she would explain her mysterious nature to him. As the year wore on and the hunting competition came, everyone knew without doubt who would come out tops. The hunting festival was a 3-day hunting expedition. With bows, arrows, traps and machetes, the hunters would go into the forest to hunt the biggest games. At this time the white man's gun had not been brought down to Africa. After 3 days, all the hunters would come out of the forest with their kills and display them at the village square. The expedition was quite a risky one. Sometimes hunters would be gored or eaten alive by beasts in the forests. To forestall such happenstance, hunters would wear amulets into the forests. Before Obinza went into the forest to hunt, he went to see Urenma, who, for reasons he could not make out, had become very withdrawn and sullen. Urenma told him which part of the forest to hunt in, and assured him the gods could watch over him, and that she would also be watching over him. When Obinza stood to leave, she began to cry bitterly. No one had seen her cry like that before. Even her parents came out to console her, but she would not stop crying, nor would she tell anyone the reason for her cry. To make her stop crying, Obinza decided not to take part in the hunting festival. However, later in the night, Urenma persuaded him to enter the forest. She wanted him to be the best in all things. Already she had helped him acquire cows, goats, sheep and chicken, and had commanded his lands to yield large produce to him. In all things, Obinza was prospering, and all could see it. When Obinza saw that she was determined to have him go hunt, he took off hunting implements and entered the forest. Before he left, she kissed him so passionately and for long that Obinza wondered if she was going to let him go eventually. When Obinza arrived at the forest, he went to the part Urenma had told him to hunt. However, unknown to Obinza, a few men had conspired to kill him in the forest so to stop him from claiming the best hunter trophy. For 3 days they watched him killing huge game after another. He killed antelopes, boars and 2 lions, and for a show threw in a crocodile into the mix. In the evening he would cut the animals open, make fire and roast them to keep them from getting rotten. His plan was to raise very early on the 4th day and go into the village to get some young men who would help him carry his kills to the village square. That morning he applied salt on the animals he had roasted whole and covered them with leaves and left for the village. On his way, 6 hunters whom he knew very well attacked him with razor-sharp machetes. He was not expecting no resistance. His heart was filled with joy. He knew no one would come close to matching the size of the games he had killed. They were too large to be true. From behind him he was attacked. He had heard nothing or seen anything suspicious. All he felt was pain as machetes cut into his back. He turned to face them, and could only lump off 2 heads before blows from the machetes of the other 4 hunters sent him to the ground. They must have stabbed him 100 times to make sure he was dead. They took his body and left it where animals would see it to feed on it, and went to share his kills amongst themselves. While they cast lot to know who would take each of Obinza's kills, Urenma came like a crowd of light and overshadowed Obinza. Life returned to his body and he stood to his feet healed. He took his machete and ran to meet with his killers. They were happily laughing when they heard footsteps coming behind and turned to see who it was. There he was, looking like he had not tasted death before. They were terrified. Obinza moved swiftly, giving them no chance. One after another he lumped off their heads. When he was done, he cast their bodies into a swamp and went into the village to get people to help him carry his kills to the village square. By midday, when all hunters had returned from the forest, the 6 hunters who had attacked Obinza were missing. A search party of young warriors was sent into the forest of Uka to find them. Obinza did not reveal to anyone what had happened in the forest, and neither did he understand how he was able to come back to life after he was killed. He was certain he had seen Urenma in the cloud of light and shining like the sun. In her appearance, she looked every inch like a goddess. To Obinza, that was just one too many of the mysterious things he had seen about Urenma, and this time he was determined to find out from her who she really was. After the hunters had made their kills ready, the elders began to inspect them. The inspection was a mere waste of time. Obinza's kills were huge and far more than those of his fellow hunters. Before the elders were done inspecting the kills each hunter made, the crowd already began to sing Obinza's name. When the elders were done, Obinza was announced the winner of the hunting championship. The next day, a feast began as the games killed by the hunters were used by their clans to prepare meals. When the search party sent to look for the missing hunters returned, they sadly reported that they found no sign of them. The festival continued without them. There was too much celebration to mourn their demise at that time. While the people of Uke celebrated, Obinza took the woman of his love, Urenma, to his new set of private huts, which he had built in readiness for their imminent wedding. His intention was to find out from her who she really was, and why she had not allowed him to pay her dowry, so they could begin to live as husband and wife. It was in Obinza's hut that Urenma tearfully revealed who she was. Obinz was in no way ready for the things he heard that day. Obim, I can do the things you observed because I am not actually human. What exactly does that mean? Obim, I am a child of the gods. I am from the river world, and that is not all. I am a princess of the gods. As soon as she mentioned the part of her being a princess of the gods, her hair came alive and began to burn like flames, and her body, the cloth around her chest and waist, began to dazzle with light. Even the tears from her eyes glowed like lamplights. She wept and told Obinza, Obim, this is who I am. I can't hide it from you anymore. My love for you has my heart to shreds. I have found that which my soul loves, and yet I can't have it. My time amongst men draws closer to its end, and yet I want to live with you forever. Obinz was in total shock. He could not believe his eyes or the things which his ears heard. How were you able to survive the test at the river? Or did your parents hide you from the oracle? The river should have claimed you when you were thrown into it. Like I said, I am a princess of the gods. I am a deity. I was sent to dwell amongst your people on my request for a while. For this reason the river could not claim me. But Obinze, my time is running out. Soon the gods will summon me to the river world. Obinze held her hand and began to cry. I don't want to lose you, Urenma. Can't you ask the gods for a little more time? Please, for the love that we share, ask them to give you more time. Obim, I can ask them for a more time, but it will only break our hearts. How can it? With much more time I will marry you and we can make babies. We would at least have more time to spend together.